Welcome, everybody, to Creating 2017 and my top 7 lessons from 2016. Jimmy J is here, and today our intention is to help you create the 2017 exactly the way that you want it to be. And the process I'm going to go through with you today, I have to give a big shout out to Julian Gordon. He created a New Year's planner, and I've been using it every year for the last 3 or 4 years now. And before his planner, I really did not get any use out of goals. I would set a goal. I would set these big, gigantic goals for a year from now, and then in 6 months, I was no closer than when I started. Sometimes I would set, goals that I thought were more realistic, and I would hit them and not even be excited about them. And it wasn't until going through this Creating 17 guide that I've really started to make this a yearly practice, and it's something that I really look forward to. And before we really dive in, I think a distinction that was made by Julian that I think will be helpful to you is the difference between goals, intentions, and experiences, right? So goals are the result. Goal is the measurable, actionable thing of where you would like to get to. The intention, they're about the reason. And so if you forget the intention part, if you miss this part, then you'll have the goal out there and it'll be, maybe a SMART goal where it's specific and measurable and actionable, relevant and time dimension. But if there's no intention behind it, if there's a reason behind it, then you're not going to hit it. You're not going to have the same drive to go after that goal. And sometimes what can happen is you can hit the goal and miss the intention. In other words, if my goal was to lose 30 pounds, right? But my intention was that what I really wanted was to live a healthy lifestyle so that I could be around for my kids and my grandkids. I could hit the goal and miss the intention, meaning that I could lose 30 pounds in a very unhealthy way that I still hit the goal, but I've completely missed the intention. So hopefully that makes sense. And experiences are about the ride. Experiences are about who you are being in the process. And one of the times that I went through this process, I had one of the worst years of my life as far as the goal that I set compared to the result that I got. But when I went and I looked at the experiences that I had that year, it was one of the most experientially rich years of my life. And like so many amazing things happened that I wasn't grateful for because I was so focused on the goal that I had set and, whether I had hit it or not. So those are the 3 things we're going to be talking about. And before we jump into 2017, I think it's really important that we look at 2016 in a couple of different ways. We're going to look at celebrating 2016. What are some of the achievements, the goals, the things that happened in 2016 that are worth celebrating? And as entrepreneurs, sometimes we're so goal driven, right? That for me personally, I'll set a goal, and when I'm at like 75% of the goal, I'm like, yeah, the goal is going to happen, and I keep moving forward. But I've set a new goal that's like a bigger, better goal, and because of that, it's not very often that I celebrate, because by the time the celebration happens, I'm already working on, a new goal. So if anybody can, relate to that, throw a 1 into the chat box. Let me know if we're on pace or not. And so what we want to do is we want to take some time to celebrate. We want to take some time also to have some gratitude for 2016. And we also want to look at what was wrong in 2016. What things would I like to do differently? Because if you don't go through that process and see like what needs to change from 2016, then it's setting goals is a waste of time. Okay, so let's go. Hopefully you've got a piece of paper and a pen. If not, you can take some screenshots. If you're on a Mac, it's Command-Shift-4 to screenshot, and you can select the area you want to screenshot. Or if you got a pen and paper, go ahead and take some notes. But what I want you to do is write down what are some goals that you achieved in 2016. So by goals you achieved, I mean, what are some things that you set out to do and that you accomplished? So some of the things, I want you to throw some of those in the chat box. So Let me know what are some goals that you achieved in 2016. And when you're going through these goals, you want to look at not just the goal, but the skill set that you developed. So a goal that I achieved inside of 2016 was that I created a new online course. Another goal I achieved in 2016 was the highest grossing month I've ever had in any year of my life. But if I want to look at the skill set that I learned, it's like some of the skills that I learned was things like Facebook ads. All right. So what are some goals that you've achieved in 2016? Go ahead and pop a couple goals into the chat box. Let me know. Write a couple of them down, but also give me what's the number one goal that you're most proud of that you achieved in 2016. And make sure when you're doing this that you use the questions box, not the chat tab. Doesn't matter how big or how goal it was. All right, Lisa says I didn't have much in the way of goals. I completed some stocks and options training and attended a couple of seminars. Fantastic. What else? Doesn't matter if it's business, if it's fitness, if it's personal. Candace Jones says, I took the leap from becoming an entrepreneur and leaving my comfort zone. Fantastic. I was able to get a car after my accident. Fantastic. From Margaret. Lisa says, I did manage to nearly achieve the minimum hours per week that I wanted towards my stock and options training. Fantastic. Mike started a cash flow club. Great. Andrea got out of a totally unworkable job, created a new one according to the criteria I wanted. That is fantastic. Douglas says, is this the right place to type? Yes, it is. All right, so good. So take some time and write down some goals. And as we're going through this today, the process that I normally do is I usually split it up into a few different days. So generally speaking, the process we're going through today, I usually do it in about 3 days. So my intention for you, because I don't want to do a 3-day webinar, is to just give you some basics, and then you can take the parts that you like or take all of it and go back and really go through this section. So when I go through the goals I achieved section, it's literally like I throw some music on and I spend probably 10 minutes on each one of these slides that I'm going to give you. So last call, any other goals? Margaret says enrolled 6 people into my new business. Fantastic. The next slide is goals that I helped other people achieve. And this part is so important as entrepreneurs, because as an entrepreneur, you get paid by helping other people succeed. And so what I want you to do is write down what are some goals that you've helped other people achieve. So inside of my list would be this last year, I've helped 58 people create their own meetup funnel for their network marketing business. Helped one of my coaching clients have a 7-figure run rate, so an $83,000 month. So what are some goals that you helped other people achieve? And I want you to be thinking in terms, as you're setting goals for this year, as what are some goals that you'd like to help others achieve, right? Would you like to help 1,000 people lose 10 pounds if you're in a weight loss company? Like, what are some goals that you'd like to help other people? We'll talk about that in a minute, but let's start out with what are some goals you've helped other people achieve? That can be clients, that could be friends, could be people in your family, could be customers of your product, anything like that. What are some goals you've helped others achieve? Write them down. And if you've got some, go ahead and type it into the chat box. Let me know what are some goals that you've helped other people achieve this year. All right, Bradley says, managed to get Socks and Sack up and running. Lisa says, helped a couple people through some difficult situations. Fantastic. So what are some goals you've helped other people achieve? And this is really the heart of entrepreneurship, right? If you're unhappy with the amount of income that you made in 2016, then the amount of income you made in 2016 is usually directly correlated to this slide of what are things that I have helped others achieve. Andrea says, I started a monthly REI huddle for group collaboration, promoted 3 other investor deals, and found 2 investors for a couple in the group. That is freaking fantastic. And I can tell you, based on that, there's if you continue to do things like that, your income is going to be, gigantic. So that is outstanding. Andrea, Bradley says, he helped somebody on the path to get debt free. The last comment was from the last one. And a couple questions about my statement about income. So as an entrepreneur, your income is, the best way you can do this is think about, as an entrepreneur, what you do is help people solve problems. That's it. And if you help people solve problems, then the more things that you can help people do, or the more goals you can help other people achieve, the more problems you can solve for them, then the more income you're going to make. We'll go through more of that in a minute. And Margaret says, I started a meetup group. New skills developed. Okay, so when you're looking at what happened last year, you want to look at what are some skill sets that you develop, because sometimes those don't necessarily pay off immediately, but they're a big part of the success that you have. So write down what is at least one new skill set that you developed last year. Could be, learning Facebook ads, could be learning how to short sell, could be I learned, about Forex or about real estate investing. So anything like that. All right, the next section here is gratitude. And this is the section when I told you the first time I did that planner, and I was pretty, distraught about the fact that I had set some goals, and I wanted to go from a multiple 6-figure year to a 7-figure year, and ended up going backwards that year, making less money than I made the year before. And then I found this gratitude exercise, and it was like, just go through and have some gratitude from the year before. And what happened was disappointment is the gap between expectations and reality. So whatever expectation that you set compared to the reality that you have, that gap is disappointment. And the problem with disappointment is that it can totally hamper our gratitude. And gratitude, the way that I think about it, is like, I have a 6-year-old and a 2-year-old. So if I was to go out and buy, a brand new toy for my 6-year-old, and a day later, he just didn't care about it and smashed it and broke it, how excited would I be to give him the next gift, right? Whereas if I gave him something and he was a great steward of it, he took care of it, he loved it, and freely, let other people get joy out of it, then how excited do you think I'd be to buy him the next toy? So think about your life in the same way, right? God is only going to give you what you can handle and appreciate. And so the more that you are a good steward of the things that you're given, the more that will come your way. And so if you've got disappointment because of that gap, then there might be things that happen that you don't even see because of that disappointment. So when I went through this process, I literally wrote out page after page after page of stuff that happened that year that I was grateful for, and I was blinded to all of it. I missed that all those wonderful things happened because I was upset that I didn't hit a goal. And it just was very, very humbling to go through that process. So here's the way that I would suggest that you do gratitude. Number one is just go back and write down some things from this last year. One of the things that I love doing is I set some time aside, usually in December, where I go through and I organize all the photos on my Mac, and I will take the photos off of my phone and just kind of like get everything off, so I'm ready for a new year. And in that process, I go through and I look at all of the photos really from that year from my phone, and it's just a great reminder of all the like little moments that happened, all the little things that I am grateful for. I started a folder on my phone now called the gratitude folder. And anytime something happens, it's just a special moment for me. I just put it into that folder on my phone. And then come the end of the year, it's really easy to review all of those things. Another thing that you can do is we do what's called top five. It started with my little brother, Casey, and he is 14 years younger than me. And every time he would come to visit, just before he would leave, I'd say, hey, what was your top five from this trip? And he would say, oh, my top five was, when we all of a sudden decided to, wrestle out of nowhere. Or my top five was when we went to this movie together. And we get really specific about what was, that top thing. And so it's a really great way to practice gratitude and to, remember, especially if you're spending time together with somebody. So those are some different things. I want you to go ahead and type into the chat box some of the things that you are grateful for. And I really suggest that you take the time to go through some photos. So one of these is my daughter is 2. So on the top left there, that was her second ever Halloween, but it was the first time she knew what was going on and was really excited about it. My son is really into Minecraft, and my wife is amazing and made that costume. Underneath that is we moved recently this year to Chilliwack, BC, and up in Canada. And there's just a photo of a beach, and we spent more time at the beach this year than I have in my entire life combined, probably. And so that's a gratitude moment. On the right is the Banff Springs Hotel, and that was a mastermind event that I was able to go to and got to hear Tim Francis speak, got to hear Perry Marshall from 80/20 Marketing speak. So these are all different things. Top left is something that was on my list for a long time, was to go on a mountain roller coaster. So it's just literally they throw up some tracks on a roller coaster or on a mountain, and you just like take a chairlift to the top, and it's like a roller coaster, but you're like actually going through nature, which was really cool. So these pictures probably don't mean a lot to you, and your pictures don't have to mean a lot to anybody else. Just whatever some of those moments that you are really grateful for, throw them down. And usually there's usually a lot of travel stuff that's on my list. And this year, a lot of the stuff that's on my list was stuff that we did here because, like I said, we moved somewhere else and just enjoyed a lot of time. One of the pictures on the bottom there is an Easter egg hunt where they actually dropped the Easter eggs from a helicopter, which was just obviously my kids freaked out about it and was amazing. So what are some of gratitude things for you? Some moments, right? And my suggestion is go through, go through and take some pictures, look through your pictures and create that gratitude folder. And the last one is evaluating 2016. So, what are some things that didn't go the way that you wanted to go, that you didn't want to? And, what will you do in its place? Because you can set new goals all you want, but if you don't look at why some of these things happened, then you're not going to be able to move forward. So, the format for this is I type out, I regret not, and then a blank. And then I say my reasons and excuses were, and to prevent this from repeating, I will make new choices to blank. So what is that looking like for you, right? So one of mine on here, so I could say something like, I regret not learning Facebook ads and online marketing sooner. My reasons and excuses were that it was too complicated and I didn't know marketing. And to prevent this from repeating, I will make new choices to, my answer for that would be focusing on smaller size steps, right? Because really, I didn't have to go from 0 to the best Facebook ad ever. I had to go from 0 to beating having no ads, which is really simple to do, and then learn from it. So whatever that regret is, I regret not spending more time with family. My reasons and excuses were that I was working really hard as an entrepreneur, and to prevent this from happening in the future, I will make new choices to set some time to unplug. And lastly is anchors. And so what I want you to do is, this is something that I do with my paid coaching clients, and we go through this once every quarter. It's a very, very powerful question. Imagine your business is a ship, is a boat. And what anchors do you have that are dragging along on the ocean floor that if removed, you could move further and faster with less resistance? So what are some things that have been slowing you down in your business that if those were gone, you'd be able to move further, faster with less resistance? And type it into the chat box, into the questions box. And I want to help a few people specifically with this, because again, you can just set a new goal for 2017 and say, well, this year I want to make 10 times the income. But if you don't change anything from last year, then there is not going to be a change. So what are some anchors? So an example of an anchor would be like, an anchor is, I don't have any other staff. It's just me. And so I'm the bottleneck in my business. An anchor would be something like, I don't have a system that brings me new leads. So what are some anchors? So go ahead and type your anchors in. And the goal in this section, when you're creating anchors, this is a process called Scrum. When you're doing this, we're not even trying to find a solution. You literally just write down some anchors and say, here's some things that have been holding me back. And some of those might be emotional things, but they can also be physical things. So if you've got more than one, type them in. Could be like, hey, my anchor is, I'm a real estate investor, and my anchor is saving up enough money for a down payment. And if you could just get rid of needing your own money, if you had like a list of investors, then you would move, instead of doing 2 properties a year, you could do 20 properties a year. So go ahead, type in some anchors. All right, so we have one anchor that is a fear of failure, one that is, Lisa says, lack of motivation. Mike says, my anchor is negative family members. Andrea, attachment to doing it right or looking a certain way. That's a big one. Andrew, we're going to talk more about that in a little bit. And doing it right, sometimes it's just a matter of calling something a beta or doing a first draft, something that can allow you to get to market and get feedback faster. Lack of self-discipline or organization. From Lisa, not knowing the best things to do or improve in order to make more money. Mike, lack of funds. Putting off tasks that I don't enjoy, such as getting caught up on financial things. Anchor is, Gina says, anchor is forgetting to think that I can and stopping all of the I can't. So the anchor is just saying I can't all the time. Candace Jones says, working is my anchor. No system yet for online ads. From Bradley, need influencers from Bradley. Do not have an office, and procrastination are Margaret's anchors. Negative self-image and not expecting results from Lisa. So these are all really great anchors. And so take some time and just go through and write out what those anchors are. And I really want to change your viewpoint of failure. Some people think that like success is at one end of the spectrum and failure is at the other end of the spectrum, and they're trying to move away from failure and toward success. The truth of the matter, and you can ask anybody who's been successful, it's like failure and success are on one side of the chart, and like mediocrity is on the other side of the chart. And so the only way for you to get to success is through failure. You need to have more failure and you need to move towards failure and towards success simultaneously, not be afraid to fail, because as you do that, as you take action, that becomes your way of research, right? As you do things, you get feedback. So a couple more. Gina says, trying to do everything myself without a system. Margaret's no online ads, and Lois is lack of focus. So just write down as many anchors as you can after this, and it's just helpful to become aware of them, and don't try to solve them. You can solve them in a little bit, but when you're in the mode of just writing down anchors, just write down as many of them as you can, and then that will allow you to look at this and say, well, hey, what's the one that's going to make the most difference for me with the least amount of input, and then you can start there. So enough with 2016. Let's talk about creating 2017. And if you thought we've been doing lots of things in the question box before, we're going to even up it more because I really want you to come off of this call knowing exactly what you want to do and having a vision and some steps for 2017. So here's a question that you can let guide you, okay? A year from today, what needs to have happened for you to say that 2017 was your best year yet? So go ahead and put that answer into the chat box. The question is, if it's a year from now, it's 2018, January, and you're looking back at 2017, what needs to have happened in 2017 for you to feel like this was your most successful year yet? So go ahead and answer that question because that question is going to determine a lot of how you set your goals on the call today. So type it into the chat box. A year from today, what needs to have happened for you to be able to consider 2017 your best year yet? That could mean, hey, I've got this many new clients. It could mean, hey, I've done this many real estate deals. It could be, hey, I've hit this rank in my network marketing company. It could be anything that you want. If it's an income goal, but go ahead and type it into the box. What specifically would need to happen for you to know that 2017 was your best year yet? So Mike says, 10,000 players in my sports app. Lisa says, get caught up on financial statements, make a certain amount of income, feel like I'm well organized, and I have a good system. Okay, great. Lisa, for that, if you want to share it on here, you're welcome to, but make sure when you're writing it down that instead of a certain amount of income, write the number down, right? And don't say, I want to 10x my income from this year. Write the specific number down, like what exactly needs to happen so that you can have a target and you can know either yes, I hit it or no, I didn't. Bradley says we've sold 100,000 pairs and donated 100,000 pairs from his Socks and Sacks business. Fantastic. And I love how specific it is. And I love, the donated 100,000 pairs is just, it's just fantastic marketing and a fantastic intention. We talked before about the goal, the intention, and the experience for you being along the way. And that is outstanding. I'm not sure if it's Margaret or Marguerite, but Marguerite says, I've overcome my fear of calls and I have 20 new customers. Fantastic. Gina says 100 new home automation clients and making $3,000 monthly in online marketing with a system. Fantastic. Lois says financial freedom with a growing business. So Lois, I love the intention behind that to create into a goal. What does that look like? Right? So financial freedom, what does that mean in a year from now? Because that means anything to anybody. So financial freedom might be, hey, I need to have 7 figures sitting in the bank. It also might be I need to have $3,000 a month of passive income so I can quit my job and have time freedom. It doesn't matter what the definition is for you. Just make sure, and you can share it on here if you like, but make sure that is specific, and then a growing business, so specifics on that as well. So if my business was to grow 50% and do this amount of sales inside of a year, then I would know that. Or if it was growing 3% month over month, again, something specific so it is measurable. Andrea Jones says 4 to 8 deals completed and quadrupled your income. fantastic. Again, when you're writing it down, don't write quadrupled income because you can never hit that goal. Literally, you can never hit it, because if your goal is to quadruple your income, you will always be in search of quadrupling your new income. So whatever, if that's, you want to, the last month of the year, have your income be quadrupled from what the first month of the year was, then great, write down a specific number. If it is by the end of the year, you want to make 4 times what you made in 2016, that's great. Just be very specific with it. And Bradley's got it broken down to 277 deals a day equals 100,000. Lisa says, seems like a stretch. I'm not sure what seems like a stretch. Sorry, Lisa, if you want to comment more on that. 10,000 in monthly income. Okay, great. So from Marguerite. Perfect. So that is where you would like to be in a year from today. Now, here is the part where I think most people who set goals get stuck. It's this question. All right, the question is, what conditions, systems, or skills are in place in a year from now that allow you to maintain that pace while still enjoying life? So fast forward a minute, pretend that it's 2018. Pretend that you're already at your goal. Okay, so, for Mike, pretend that you've already got, 10,000 players in your sports app. What systems do you have in place that allowed you to get to those 10,000, right? How are you meeting those people? Do you have some sort of a marketing funnel that's bringing them in? Are you doing paid ads? Is it a certain size team that you have? What is in place? Okay. If it is getting caught up on financial statements, what is in place? If you're all caught up, what's in place moving forward so that it doesn't happen again? In order to sell 100,000 pairs and donate 100,000 pairs, what things need to be in place, Brad, in a year from now? So if you're at that goal, what things would you already have in place, right? Would it be, would you be doing the Facebook ads? Because I know a little bit about your business. Would you be doing the ads, or would it be an agency that's doing the ads? What would that look like? What would be in place as far as, the shipping conditions? Are you growing like Airbnb and Uber, where they're having an offer where people can refer friends and be able to get discounts? So what things would be in place in a year from now? Because the real answer is not just setting this intention or this goal. The real question is, what do I need to do to create those systems and conditions today? Because that's what's going to get you there. So hopefully that makes sense. I want you to type in the answer to that. What are some conditions, systems, and skills that need to be in place in order for you to maintain that pace while still enjoying life? So go ahead and type that in. And for Andrea, what would need to be in place for you to do those 4 to 8 deals completed, like every single year? What things would you need to have? Is it a buyer's list? Is it a seller's list? Is it having a list of investors? Depending on what your business is. So what would that need to look like? All right. So Lisa says, I'm not sure what I would put down. It seems really optimistic. So the reason that it's uncomfortable to write something down that you think is a stretch is because generally you've set the goal before and it hasn't happened. And usually if you set the goal before and it hasn't happened, it's because we just set the goal without figuring out what needs to be in place for it to happen. So if the goal, as you said, is $8,000 per month, what things would need to be in place? If you want to just tell me a little bit about what business that you have, Lisa, I think you might have said it already, but if you let me know what kind of business you have, we can go through that. I really want to, I'm going to pick one person, and we're going to go deep on this as an example, because I think it'll make a lot more sense that way. So if you let me know what systems would be in place in a year from now, then I'll pick somebody to be an example. So Bradley says, first month free with customer paying shipping, consistent ads running online, big social media presence. Gina says, knowing what is needful for me and what is not that somebody else can do, and doing that. Lisa says, stocks and options, trading independently, minimize my losses better, well organized, and enough money in my accounts to trade with. Okay, great. So Lisa, would you like to be, are you okay to be the example here? I'll work with you a little bit one-on-one. All right. Lisa says, yes. Marguerite says, to achieve 10,000 per month divided by 12 months is 833 per month, divided by 30 days is 27 per day, making at least 100 calls per month. So the typical way when you're learning about goal setting is to say, hey, what's your goal over the course of the year? And then like just reverse engineer it. So an example of that would be like, hey, I set a goal last year to sell 200 copies of my online course. Okay. And so when I set that goal, I was working with a company that was helping me kind of set up my ad budget and figuring out how I was going to do some marketing for it. And they're like, 200 in a year from now, yeah, that's no problem. We can do that for sure. Shouldn't be a problem. I need you to get this to me in 3 weeks, and I need you to do this over here and that over there. And remember before I said most people overestimate goals and underestimate momentum. So we set this goal, and if we were to just like work it backwards, it would be like, well, I had to sell 50 courses every single quarter in order to hit 200 by the end of the year. But when you actually look at the workflow, selling one course to somebody cold market online was like probably 70% of the work, because it meant that I had to set up the ads. It meant that I had to do all the email sequences. Meant that I had to actually build the online course, had to do my first webinar. Like a huge amount of stuff had to go into it. Okay. So if I just said, well, I want to be at 200 by the end of the year, so I need to be at 50 by the end of one quarter and 50 at the end of the next quarter. Or if I was to say, that equals just 18 people buying my course per month. Well, at the end of the first month, I would be like really upset that I got 0 people started when I should have got 18 people started. Because my story was, once I set that goal, I said, hey, listen, my goal isn't actually 200 by the end of the year. I mean, that's where I'd like to be. But my goal really is by the end of quarter 1 of this year, I want to have 1 cold market sale made. And as soon as I said that, it was like the end of our conversation. And the marketing person was like, oh my gosh, okay, well, we have to do Facebook ads instead of SEO because SEO is going to take too long. And that thing I told you have to get to me in 3 weeks, I actually need that in tomorrow if we're going to do this by the end of quarter number 1. And all this urgency changed. And here's what happened. On the inside, I felt like selling 1 by the end of the first quarter was doable. Like I felt like that was something that I could do. And it meant that I would have my webinar complete. It meant that I'd have an email sequence up. So those are like the things that were in place. So hopefully that makes some sense, because a lot of times people have these goals and they just break it up to, here's what I have to do per day. And it sounds like really easy, but then when you actually get to doing it, it really isn't. So you want to have something that you feel is like a makeable putt in golf terms. Andrew says, weekly routine of engaging new referral partners and following up with existing ones, website up with some automated marketing. That's a perfect example of some systems that would be in place. And if you know that that's what would be in place in a year from now, then you can start today by building out some of those systems and things. And even if you don't hit your goal by the end of the year, imagine if at the end of the year, all those things you talked about, like in a year from now, Andrea, if you had a weekly routine of engaging new referral partners, maybe you had an automated way to engage those referral partners. If you had a website up, if you had automated marketing happening, if you had a way to be able to get more customers into your pipeline, like that's more important than the actual goal itself. Lois says virtual assistant and personal assistant, and Lisa says record my past trades and write out what I can learn from them, positive things that I could do better. Okay, so let's go. I'm going to do a quick example here with Lisa. I've got lots of content I want to share with you today, but if we miss this one part, then the goals that you're setting you'll likely be setting the same goals over and over and over and over again. And goal setting for you will just be an act of saying, here's what I wish would happen next year, not actually, a concrete plan for you to get there. So Lisa says that stocks and options trading independently is her business. And in a year from now, she need to minimize her losses better, be well organized, and have enough money in the accounts to trade with and improve skills for trading. And again, she is given permission here to be the example. So here's what I would say, Lisa. I would be looking for, I call them systems. I don't know what word you'd like to use for it, but like what's something that if you could build it one time, then it would be there for you ongoing. So an example of this would be like if I was to say I want to call one person per week for a year, then maybe that's some good discipline and maybe I could learn how to do that skill set. Whereas if I said I would like to set up an email sequence that goes out automatically to new people who subscribe to my list, I'd have to do that one time, and then I could send one email per week to my list automatically without me having to do anything ever again. So that's the difference between the two. One of them is like, here's some actions I want to take daily. The other one's like, what is the thing that would need to be in place? Okay, so for Lisa, if you say not enough money in my accounts to trade with, one solution to that would be, what is the system that I use in a year from now to always have enough money to trade with? And that could be that you have some sort of a side business that is funding money, and that money goes straight into your trading account. And so you've always got new money coming in that you can trade with. Another example would be like if I had a list of people who were investors and I had investor capital to work with. So Lisa says, I do have enough money to trade with, but most of it is an RSP, which is like a 401k for those of you who are joining from the US, which is quite restricted as the type of trading that I can and can't do with it. So that's great. There's just a restriction. So again, what's the system you have in place in a year from now? Maybe the system you have in a year from now, or maybe the solution is maybe there's some sort of a way that you are able to trade through RRSPs. So finding a solution to that question could be worth a lot of money to you, right? If you just 10x the amount of money that you were trading, you would literally 10x the amount of profit that you're having. So finding an answer to that, a solution to that problem is a very great use of your time. And maybe the answer, and this is not financial advice, you can find it from somewhere else. Just want you to think about the general principle of this, right? So maybe the solution is like, I can open up another account that's not an RRSP, and I can borrow money from the bank, and I can borrow it using my RRSP as collateral, right? And now it's a loan, but you can go out and trade it however you want, and it's just being secured by your RRSP. It's not actually in there. Or in Canada, maybe an interest-free savings account. Or another example would be, again, if you had a list of people and you could invest money with them, or you could invest their money. Again, you don't have to do that, but that's the question is, what would I have to do so that this anchor of not having enough trading capital is no longer ever a problem? One challenge is there's only so much I can handle at once at this time. Too many trades is hard to manage from somebody who is new to trading. Okay, so again, it's not what you need to have today. You're talking about in a year from now, what would you need to have in place? Okay, and one of those things is capital, right? And what I hear coming up now is, I don't want to have more money to trade with because I can't do too many trades at once, and I want to make sure that I don't lose it. Well, remember, another one of the things on your list from earlier was that you needed some sort of a way to minimize your losses. Okay, so that again fits into a system. What's the system that you have that minimizes your losses? So somebody who's, I think, well, so an example of that would be like a stop loss. So if you had a stop loss, or if you came up with an equation and you're like, this is what I do to make sure that I manage my risk. So that's another system that you need to create. So hopefully that gives you an idea. Some people would say, hey, my goal is I just want to, trade more, or I want to whatever. But if you take some time and you think, what are the things that are holding me back from really like 10xing this goal that I have for myself, then you can start to put those systems in place. And you know what? Even if you don't hit your goal for this year, if by the end of the year you have a system in place to minimize your losses, right? You're talking about looking at past trades that didn't go well, thinking about what else you could have done with them, such as ruling out instead of getting out with a loss. So in a year from now, if you had a system for minimizing losses, if you had the ability to access as much capital as you want, not so that you can do more trades, but so you can do a higher volume, like when you're buying, you just put more money into it. What are those systems that need to be in place? So hopefully that helps. And my intention here of going through some of that detail with you is not just with Lisa, with everybody on the line, is to help you figure out what does that look like for you. Okay, so what are some of those bottlenecks for you? If you're a network marketing company and you're like, hey, my bottleneck is I need to meet more people. Like, okay, well, great. You can make a goal to go out and talk to a few people every day. Or you can say, what do I need to do to create one time so that I consistently have 300 new leads a month, right? Do I need to learn a new skill set on using Facebook groups? Do I need to, have a meetup group? Do I need to do, paid Facebook ads? Like, what's the way that you can do something one time and have leads come to you for the rest of forever? Okay, great. So now we're going to go on to, we've talked a little bit about some specific goals. What I like to do with goals is actually zoom out, and I like to write out like intentions and goals of where I'd like to be, not just this year, but like in the next 5 years. And I literally just take a piece of paper and a pen, and I do 3 categories: things, places, and charity. Okay, so what are some things that I'd like to have? What are some places I'd like to travel to? And what are some, giving things? And when I say charity, it doesn't necessarily mean like the Heart and Stroke Foundation or something like that. Charity can be whatever you want. It's just anything to do with giving. So one of the examples on mine inside of charity is I'd like to be able to retire my mom at some point. And so it's not that's not a charity, right? But it's just a goal that I have that has something to do with giving to somebody else. So whatever are in those lists, just fill out as many different things as you can. And you don't have to do them all this year, but it stretches your vision of here's some of the things that I'd like to do. And I did this for the first time, I think 11 years ago, and I made a list of 100 things from like as little as I'd like a new car battery for my car, so my car starts in the morning, all the way up to like I'd like to have $1 million in the bank, I'd like to retire my mom, I'd like to a bunch of different things. And I've gone back and found that piece of paper a couple times. I think it's gone now. We've moved a few too many times. But as I go back and look at it, there's things that just get crossed off that list without me even knowing about it. My subconscious mind is just working on them. So go ahead. After this, you can write some of them down now. But what are some things you'd like to have? What are some places you'd like to go that you'd like to travel to before you die? And what are some charity things you want to do? And just write as many things as you can. And that will make it easier for you to be able to set some goals and attach those to some business goals, right? So if you're like, hey, my business goal is to do X, Y, Z, it's to have 10,000 people that join my sports app or whatever. Give yourself some rewards along the way and say, well, hey, one of the places that I've always wanted to go is Greece. And so as soon as I get to 5,000, sports users in my app, that's going to mean I'm going to make $5,000 a month. I'm making that number up. I have no idea. But if that's what it represented, then if you spent $5,000 once to go on a great vacation, and that motivated you to do the work to get those 5,000 members, then, great. You got one $5,000 trip, and then that essentially is free. And then you make $5,000 a month after that because you hit your goal. So try attaching your goal to something that's a thing, place, or charity, and you can do multiple different ones. So the bottom line is after you've done that, we've already talked a little bit about some goals. Write down what a specific goal is. So it needs to be a specific measurable outcome and a date that you want to be in a year from now. And then from there, you want to break it down to what does that look like in 90 days. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you're, a quarter of the way to your goal, because you're thinking in terms of what needs to be in place. And you're like, hey, if in 90 days all I had in place was a system to stop my losses on my trades, or if in 90 days all I had in place was something that brought me ongoing leads, 300 leads a month, then it would be very easy for me to hit my recruiting goal for the rest of the year. So that is goals. Number 2 is intentions, and intentions are about the reason, like why do I want to do the thing that I want to do? And I'm going to give you I'm going to read something here for you. 1 second. I'm going to read you something that goes to the difference between goals and intentions. So goals account for the first type of success that is based on destinations. Goals are all about the what, why, and where. That's how we've been traditionally taught to set goals. Write down where you want to be, what you want to have, and when. But this is incomplete. That's why so many people set New Year's resolutions goals and they fail. They were never specific about why losing 20 pounds was important to them. It just seemed like something nice to do. So a goal might be like to run a marathon by the end of the year in under 4 hours. So that would be a specific goal, to run a marathon by the end of the year in under 4 hours. But it doesn't capture your intention, it doesn't capture the why you're pursuing a goal. Once the intention is clear, then you're able to draw from an intrinsic source of motivation and a deep sense of purpose. The other beautiful thing about an intention is that it allows for the goal to manifest in a variety of ways. This is super, super important. If you're clear about the intention, you might, accomplish what you wanted to accomplish in a totally different way. For example, if your intention is to be healthier, there are many goals that could help you create, there's many goals that you could create that align with that intention. So if your goal is to be healthier, or if your intention is to be healthier, one way to do that is to run a marathon by the end of the year in under 4 hours. But there's a lot of other ways you can get there as well. So being clear on the intention will allow you to make sure you still get there regardless of the goal. So the intention would be to be healthier because diabetes runs in my family. My mom died in her 60s, and I want to see my grandson grow up. So when you're specific about the intention, it gets even more clear. And experiences combine goals and intentions together. In addition to knowing what, where, when, and why, experiences also make you declare who and how you want to be along the way. So some people would like to work out on their own. Other people like to work out in groups. Some people are fine with a treadmill, where other people want CrossFit. So in the experience section, you could write down, I want to be self-motivated, but also challenged and supported by a group of other women and still enjoy what I eat. So that is what we're talking about when you're writing down an experience, and this will drastically increase your chances of hitting your goal. So I want you to write down your intention. So one of the ways I do this is I go through and I say, what are some of the roles that I have? And yes, this webinar is being recorded. We'll send it out as a replay. Paul is driving and would love to see the pages. So yes, we can definitely do that, and you can go back through the recording. So what I want you to do is write down on a piece of paper your roles, right? So mine are husband, father, entrepreneur, leader, course creator. You could write whatever type of roles that you want. Once you've written down some roles, I want you to pick one of them right now. So what's one of the roles? I'm going to ask you to share it in a minute. So what are one of your roles? Actually, you can just go ahead in the chat box, type out what is one of your roles. So mine are father, husband, entrepreneur, leader, course creator. What are some of your roles? All right. And here's what we're talking about intentions. I want to be the type of blank, so type in your role, who, and this is going to be about who you're being along the way, who you're being in this process. Okay, so we've got entrepreneur from Brad, entrepreneur from Mike, trader from Lisa, mompreneur from Gina. And I love the term mompreneur. However, in this specific exercise, I would suggest making mom and entrepreneur two separate roles, right? And doing this process for both of them. Paul says real estate coach. Marguerite says mother. Okay, great. So now what I want you to do is I want you to type into the chat box, I want to be the type of, and whatever you wrote in there, I want to be, so Bradley would be like, I want to be the type of entrepreneur who, and just write any one thing, right? I want you to write down a few of them at home, but in the chat box or the questions box, I want you to write one specific one in there. So I want to be the type of father who speaks his wife's love language every day. I want to be the type of entrepreneur who is prepared and ready to go. I want to be the type of mom who sets time aside dedicated to their kids. Candace Jones, I want to be the type of entrepreneur who never gives up. Fantastic. Who else? What do we got in here? I want to be the type of, Tim Nayu, I want to be the type of leader that is an example of what my kids, grandkids, and family members want to emulate. I love it. Marguerite, I want to be the type of mother who helps her daughter go to school. Fantastic. So put these in. I want to be the type of trader who makes a lot more than I lose. Bradley, I want to be the type of entrepreneur who has created financial freedom. Paul, I want to be the type of coach that gives real life experiences that people can put to use towards their goals. So these are all about your intentions and your experiences, and the experiences are about the ride, who you're being along the way. So when you talk about creating experiences, this is a big difference from goal setting. So rather than saying, hey, my goal is to have a Ferrari, that would be like a goal. An experience would be, I would like to experience what it's like to be an entrepreneur who owns a Ferrari. And it might seem like it's just semantics and one of those is a lot longer than the other. But it's a massive shift in your consciousness and in your way of being. If you say my goal is to have a Ferrari, well, even if you hit that goal, it can be taken away from you. If you say, I want to experience what it's like to be an entrepreneur who owns a Ferrari, then even if you lost the Ferrari, right, you would always and forever have the experience of what it was like to own a Ferrari. And you're not attached to the thing anymore. You're attached to the experience. So I hope that makes sense. I got a couple more in here that I want to read out. Lois says, I want to be the type of entrepreneur who becomes a great leader. Fantastic. Mike says, I want to be the type of entrepreneur who helps people enjoy sports that they don't currently watch. I want to be the type of entrepreneur who helps others, from Marguerite. So those are all fantastic things. So when you're creating experiences, here's the path. All right. Number one, or 0 on this chart here, is I'm currently experiencing what it's like to be. And on the right is actually LeBron James. So this was a few years ago, and LeBron James would have said, I'm experiencing what it's like to be a great player who led 2 teams to the NHL finals and twice and lost. Okay, so that's where I'm at right now. Experience, I ultimately want to experience what it's like to be an NBA champion. Intention, why is having this experience so important to me other than just doing it? I want to be the greatest basketball player of all time. growth? What limiting beliefs or fears will be pushed by this goal? That I don't have to do it on my own, and that I'll never win an NBA championship. All right, so that all fits into intention. So setting, here's what I'm experiencing right now, and here's what I would like to experience, right, in the future. Next is conditions, and we talked a little bit about this, but these are the gaps, and this is your environment. So a gap would be like, what challenges or excuses do I foresee stopping me from creating the experience? Not having role players around me, not having great coaching like Kobe and Jordan had and Phil Jackson. Support. How can I attempt to close these gaps in advance? What can help me successfully create this experience? I could team up with Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh in Miami. And preparations. A lot of your goals that you set are outside of your control, right? If you say, I want to make 100 sales, well, making a sale in and of itself is really outside of your control. If somebody else chooses to buy or not buy, it's not really in your control. So inside of preparations, we're talking about effort. What are the actions that I'm 100% accountable for in order to have this experience? Okay, so that effort could be like, I can't control how many sales I get, but I can control how many presentations I make or how many calls I make. So I'm responsible for, making X number of calls. I'm going to do 5 calls every day, or I'm going to build a system that brings 100 leads a day, whatever that looks like. So for LeBron, it would be developing my post-game, training to endure the playoffs, not just the regular season. Initiation, what's the first domino? This is such an amazing question. What's the easiest action I can do right now that will set my goal in motion? So what's something I can do right now to get this moving forward? So his was schedule low post training for a few weeks with Houston Rockets legends Hakeem. And 8 is measurement. How will I measure my success along the way? Right? Points in the paint, field goal percentages, number of personal fouls, number of turnovers, number of rings. So those are the 3 sections that you need to have. You want to screenshot it. All right. It's intentions. So what am I experiencing now? What do I want to experience and why? What are some beliefs that are standing in my way? The next one is conditions. This is your environment. So what things do you need to create in your environment to be able to accomplish the thing that you want to accomplish and experience what you want to experience? What are the gaps and where can you get support from? And the last one is preparations. What are you 100% responsible for? What are you committed to? And what things can you do in order to make it happen? Okay, so I want to experience what it's like to, and then fill in the blank. And really that is the steps that it takes to not just set a goal, but to set a goal and hit it. And the last thing that I would suggest that you do when it comes to creating 2017, pick one of these. So it can really, really, really simplify things for you. If you have a quote or a theme song or a chapter, something that can help you guide your year. And the first year that I did this was 2014. And one of mine in there was about my word of the year was leverage. That was my one thing. And anytime I had a time throughout the year when it was like, should I do this or should I do that? I just said, well, will this give me more leverage or will this give me less leverage? So that's kind of how I came up with the answer. So I want you to go through and say, just come up with an answer for each of these, and then you can kind of save one as the mantra for your year. So I want you to go ahead and type it into the questions box and say, my quote of the year is blank, or my theme song is blank. So here's some of the ones for me. My quote of the year, this is going back to my 2014. My quote of the year is, we must all suffer one of 2 things, the pain of discipline or the pain of regret, Jim Rohn. So that was my quote of the year, because what I wanted to work on was discipline. Theme song, I actually didn't write down a theme song. This chapter of my life is titled, I learned more rebuilding it than I learned building it the first time, and that's something that I heard from Robert Kiyosaki. A question that I want to guide me this year is, am I being the captain right now? And a word or principle I want to embody this year is Jerome Aginla, who is a hockey player. And the reason I wrote that down was because every time the team did well, he was always passing the credit to other people, and every time the team did poorly, he was always taking it on himself. And that's what I wanted to embody. I'll give you a couple more examples, but go ahead and just write one of these into the box. I'm going to write a couple of these out. My theme this year is Just Breathe from Gina. My song is Don't Worry, Be Happy from Gina. My theme song is Life's Been Good by Joe Walsh from Mike South. So go ahead and write in. Let me know what any one of these things is. My personal favorite one is the chapter of my life is titled. So if my life was a book, this year would be titled what? That's my favorite one because one of the reasons it's my favorite one is because it helps me see just beyond this year, right? And it's like, well, the chapter of this is called the chapter where I learned online marketing, or this is the chapter where I learned how to raise capital, or this is the chapter where I put all the learning pieces together and finally made a ton of money, or this chapter of my life is when I massively saved and invested money so that I could be free for the rest of my life. This chapter of my life is titled being 100% present with my kids. So what is this chapter of your life titled? Or if you want to say your quote, your theme song, a question you want to guide you, or a word or principle. I also find a word or principle to be really helpful. So mine in the past has been leverage. Mine in the past has been leader. So whatever that is for you. So my chapter of this life is titled Adding Value from Gina. Marguerite says focus. Tim says word, and the word is visualized, enthusiastic, and determined. Candace Jones says my theme song is One Step at a Time. Fantastic. Lois says principle is self-disciplined. And Marguerite says, if my life is a book, this chapter is called I Am Making Progress. Bradley says this chapter of my life is titled Creating Massive Financial Freedom and Passive Income. Outstanding. Lisa says the chapter of my life is how I managed to make at least $8,000 per month while having enough free time and low stress. Awesome. Paul says this chapter is titled I'm Back on Top. Freaking love it. All right, so keep on typing yours in there. And here is a quick recap, and then we're going to go through my top 7 lessons from 2016. And the point of them isn't just so that you know them, but it's so that you can implement them in your business and save some time and pain and frustration that I went through in your own business. So here's your action steps coming away from this, kind of the recap. We talked about celebrating 2016, right? What are some goals that you accomplished? What are some things you helped other people accomplish? And what you help other people accomplish will probably determine the amount of income that you make this year, okay? Number 2 is some gratitude. Take some time, go through some pictures, whatever process you want to go through. Some people like journaling, some people like doing a vision board, whatever you need to do to bring gratitude and just have some reflection over 2016 before moving forward, do that. Number 3 is evaluate. What are some things that you wish you could do differently? Not because you're going to dwell on them, but because you're going to learn from that mistake and move forward. Mistakes are fantastic. They're teachers. And somehow the school system has taught us that mistakes are bad when really that's how we learn. So, own the mistake, figure out what you're going to do differently this year, and then move on from it. And number 4 are what are some anchors? What are some things that slowed you down in 2016 that if you just got rid of them without doing anything else, your business would go further and faster with less resistance in 2017. Number 2 is creating 2017. So a year from today, in order for me to say this was the best year of my life, what would need to happen? Finish that statement. Number 2 is go through your why. What is the intention that you have, right? I intend to, the reason that I want this goal is, what? We talked about some gaps. What are some things, what are some systems that need to be in place in a year from now for you to be able to maintain this goal that you have? So that could be an online marketing system. That could be a set of investors. a gap could be some education that you need to go get in the next year. So what are some of those gaps? Number 4 is, what is the effort? What are the things that are within your control? Because there's some things about your goal that really you have no control over, and there's other things that are 100% in your control. So figure out, what are the things that are that I'm 100% responsible and accountable to, and figure out what those things are, because those are your leverage points. That's the difference between you hitting the goal and not hitting the goal. That's the difference between watching The Secret and listening to the Law of Attraction all day long, making vision boards and never getting anywhere. Because you need to figure out what's in my control and how can I put that effort in. And number 5 is, what is the first domino, right? What's something that I can do on that goal? And if it's like, hey, by the end of the year, the system I want to have in place is I need to have $1 million that I can invest with, right? I want to have investors that could, where I could be having $1 million to trade with. And what's the first domino? Well, the first domino might be like, get my first investor, or my first domino might be to write a list of 20 names and phone numbers of people that could possibly invest, right? And just writing that list on in of itself isn't going to solve the problem for you, but it's the first domino, and it helps build some momentum. And remember, most people overestimate goals and they underestimate the power of momentum. So hopefully that is helpful. So let's move on to my top 7 lessons from 2016 on how you can implement them in your business. And then we'll have some time to go through a couple takeaways from you and any questions that you have. So as we're going today, you don't need to take every single thing that we've gone through and apply all of it. It's just finding what's the one takeaway that I'm going to take action on immediately. What's that first domino? So as we're going today, especially through my top 7 lessons, you don't need to apply all 7 of these lessons. Just find one of them or one part of one of them that applies to your business. And I want you to remember what it is, write it down, because we're going to go through that at the very end. But just take one thing and take action on it. So here's my top 7 lessons from 2016. The first one is attract, don't chase. So I read a book called .com Secrets, and it's all about reversing your flow. So if you're a network marketer, if you're a real estate investor, if you're a coach, and anything like that, how can you attract people? How can you get them coming to you rather than you chasing them? And this is the simplest slide that I've ever seen on the subject. Again, it comes from .com Secrets. The 4 things you need to know in order to be able to attract people rather than chasing them is who, where, bait, and result. So the who is, who do you work with? So if you're an entrepreneur, right, rather than just saying, anybody with a credit card is the person that I want to work with. Or if you're a coach, you're like, hey, anybody who will pay me is who I want to work with. The days of that are over because of social media and the internet. It's so easy for somebody who's looking for a coach to go find somebody other than you who specifically works with them rather than somebody who is a generalist and works with everyone. So who do you want to attract, right? I want to work with, moms that want to be entrepreneurs who have young kids. I want to work with network marketing leaders who already have, 5,000 or more people in their downline. I want to work with, sports fans who are already spending money on sports tickets. So being really specific about who it is that you want to attract. From there, you can figure out where to find them. Where's the pond you're going to fish from? And if you don't know who, it's very difficult to figure out the where. So if you know exactly who it is that you want to attract, then it becomes easier to figure out where to find them. And then number 3 is bait. What are you going to use to attract people? So for my online course, I have a Meetup cheat sheet. So anybody who is in network marketing and they want to recruit from Meetup, what do they want, right? So rather than saying, well, what I want is to sell more of my course, and so that's what I want, instead of that, say, what does the end user want, right? They want more prospects. They want to talk to more qualified people. So what is the bait? In my instance, it's a cheat sheet that I give away for free in exchange for somebody's email address. So what is the bait when you're thinking about who your ideal client is? What's the bait? How can you attract them so that they're getting something that they want, ideally for free? And the number 4 is, what's the result? Where do you want to, where would you ideally take that person to? If you could work with them however you wanted, what's the end result you would like them to get? So my example for my course is, my result is that I would like my end user to never have to worry about calling friends or family for their network marketing company ever again. That they never have to call the same person over and over and over to follow up or find out where they are. That they would have a consistent stream of leads, and that they could do it in like an affordable way, so they don't have to have a few $1,000 a month for Facebook ads. So that's the who, the where, the bait, and the result. So for mine, the who is network marketers. The next product I'm creating is specifically for network marketers who already have like 5,000 people in their downline. The where is Facebook, so that's the pond that I'm fishing from. The bait is my cheat sheet, and the result is helping them have a consistent stream of leads. So apply that to your business, right? So what does that look like for you? I've got some people that are on here. So Lisa says, since I work for myself with no clients or customers, I'm not quite sure if this who, where, bait, etc. applies to me. So your business is always people. No matter what you do, your business is people. So if you were having investors as an example, so that you don't ever have to worry about trading your own money or having enough money to trade, then here's where that would come into play, right? So who would be an investor? And again, you want to be specific. So an example of this would be like, I know somebody who invests in real estate, and they look for investors all the time. And some people are just like, I'm looking for anybody who will give me money. Well, instead of that, this person said, my who is, I want to work with dentists. Sounds crazy, but they said dentists. Why dentists? Well, because they make lots of money, and because they are busy all of the time. And because they're busy, they're not like micromanaging his decisions as the person doing the investing. So he said, I want to meet dentists. As soon as he said, I want to meet dentists, now the where became easier. And what he found out was that there was a golf tournament that was for the Dentist Association, and he asked them if he could sponsor the golf event, which they'd never had anybody do before. But he said, yeah, all I want is just put me on the 9th hole, and I'll give you, this much money, or maybe it was a free giveaway, I forget. But he sat there on the 9th hole, and as a group of dentists came through and were golfing, there was another like set of 4 people who were waiting for their turn to go. And as they were waiting for their turn to go, he got to talk to them about investing in real estate. So he got in front of a huge number of, really great prospects. And the bait in that case could be, hey, come to a seminar where I, teach about real estate investing. The bait could be, hey, I'll give you this, cheat sheet that tells you about investing, or whatever the case may be. And what's the result? The result is I want to get you better return than what you get in the stock market without you having to babysit it. So that is the process. And if you take some time and thinking about it, you'll be able to figure out the who, the where, the bait, and the result. And so if this doesn't apply to your business, no problem. But this is one of my lessons from 2016 is finding ways to attract. And for those of you who want to go deeper into that, the resource I would suggest is called .com Secrets, a book by Russell Brunson. And I think you get it for free, you just pay for shipping because it's one of his baits that he uses. Number two is funnels. So this is one of the things that I really learned this year. And so again, from what we talked before, we have lead magnet, which is the thing you give away for free, which is your bait. You've got a tripwire, which is something that is a low-cost way for somebody to buy something from you. You've got your main offer, which is the main thing you sell, an upsell, and a residual. So a lot of people just have one offer. If you're doing any type of online marketing, having one offer is going to really limit what you can do. So if you're a network marketer and you sell, fitness products, for example, or like a weight loss shake or something like that, that might be your main offering. But what if you could add an upsell, right? What if you could offer, group coaching that you did over the phone as an upsell, right? Or just be thinking about what are some additional things like that you can do. So one of the person that I follow, his name is James Wedmore. He has a online course that I've taken before. It's all about learning how to make videos and things like that. Well, he created an upsell that is $20,000 to be a part of his private mastermind for the year. There's another person I follow, David Siteman Garland, who did the same thing, and he has a course about creating online courses, which is how I learned how to build my online course. So same exact thing. I think his was like $25,000, and he literally held a webinar and said, if you want to do this, go to this website, pay $1,000. And then if you're accepted, then you owe us the other $24,000. And if you're not accepted, then, maybe next year. And you might think like, well, how can you just sell something for, $25,000? Well, he had a whole bunch of people that had bought his course for $1,000, and a lot of them, made $100,000, $200,000 inside of like a 7-day period launching their course. So if you bought his course for $1,000 and made 200 grand, would you want to give him 25 grand to learn how to go to the next level? Of course you would. So finding different ways to have this way for your customers to be able to have more sales experiences from you, because the people who have already bought from you are the ones that are most likely to buy again. So again, if you're in real estate, it's like if you have somebody who bought a single family house with you and you wholesaled it and they made 30 grand, like maybe the upsell is start thinking about, how could you take the top, 10% of your clientele and help them get into apartment buildings. Okay. If you have some online products or services, what's an upsell you could do? And then a residual is just something you can do on an ongoing basis. So here's how that looks like. That ladder looks like into a funnel. So you've got your lead magnet, the thing you give away for free. You've got your tripwire, which is something that somebody can pay a little bit of money just so that they've bought something from you even one time. So a lead magnet might be like you have a meetup group and you get together for free and you do something that your ideal market would enjoy. So some bait. Your tripwire might be you have a second event that's a free event, that's a paid event, and they pay like $10. And just having if somebody buys from you one time, they just give you their credit card info once, they're significantly more likely to buy from you in the future. So find a way that you can just give somebody a really easy way to just pay, $10. I think I spent $27 the other day because of a Facebook ad, and they said, here's a free cheat sheet about how to create a Facebook group. And then immediately after that, they're like, hey, we have this little mini course, and it's like $27 or $37. And because it's something I've been thinking about, I bought it immediately. It was like 11:30 at night, and it was only an hour worth of training. I went through the whole thing before I went to bed. So that's an example of a tripwire, and I'll probably buy something from that company again. I'll probably buy something more expensive from them because I've already paid them once and I enjoyed what I got. And then the third thing is the main offer. So you put a bunch of people into the top, and out at the bottom comes the most qualified people. And that's where you can do an upsell or a residual. So that's one of my takeaways from this year is really learning funnels. I spend a lot of time selling to people one at a time over the phone, in person, in the past. And I spent a lot of time where people, would cancel appointments or they wouldn't show up or whatever. And the reason why was because I was spending my time with the wrong people, right? Once somebody goes through this funnel, once they've bought something or a few things, then it's really easy for me to spend time with that person because I'm talking to a really qualified person. So a resource, if you're looking for one, would be 80/20 Sales and Marketing. And yeah, it's just a book that explains a bit about funnels and explains how generally speaking, 80% of the profit that you make comes from 20% of your clients. And we're so stuck chasing everybody that we, miss the fact that we can make a lot more money by just focusing on the select few that are the customers that pay us the most. My third lesson from this year has been location freedom. So I quit my job at 23. I'm now 34. So it's been 11 years that I've had time freedom. And I've gone on a path for a long time, about financial freedom and, time freedom. Time freedom has always been my number one. Money's fantastic, but money without time really is useless. So there's time freedom, there's money freedom, and then there's location freedom. And this year I really learned a ton about location freedom by, the last few years. I've been doing whatever I can do to make sure that none of my income sources matter where I live, and we've been able to, just move somewhere else. It's actually a cheaper cost of living, and where I used to live is there on the left. That's an aerial shot that I took the last time I was there, and on the right is the same time of year where I live now. So location freedom has been, just fantastic. And I don't think now when I'm looking at income sources, it's really high on my list is location freedom, meaning that is there anything, if I build this income source, do I have to go to training seminars, or is there something physical that's holding me to that location? So that is lesson number 3 for me. Number 4 is called Scrum, and Scrum is just a way of getting things done. It's really helped me over the last year or two to really take ideas that I had and take them to reality. So an example of this, Scrum, in my experience, you can use it to say something like, hey, I'd like to make 3 sales every week, but it's mostly suited for some of the stuff we talked about earlier where we said, where would you like to be in a year from now? So if you're like, hey, in a year from now, I'd like to have this marketing funnel set up, or hey, in a year from now, I'd like to have an online course built, or anything like that. I want to have a website where I can take clients' credit card numbers. And it's something that you're going to do once and then never have to do again. That's really where I find Scrum is the most useful. And so what you do with Scrum is there's 2 parts. One part is called your backlog. And your backlog is just all the things that you could do, all of the ideas that you have of things that you'd like to do. And you take them and you put them onto little Post-it notes, little sticky notes, and you put them all onto what's called a backlog. And as soon as I did this, it was like, I don't know if you've ever used a computer before where there's like 20 tabs open. And then it's all of a sudden, everything just works so slowly. And then you close a bunch of programs and all of a sudden everything starts to work fast again. That's what Scrum has been for me. So I took all of these ideas, put it onto a backlog, and all of a sudden I didn't have to think about them anymore because they were somewhere and they were safe and I knew I could go back to them. From there, I would take a 2-week period and I would move some of the sticky notes onto a board. The board just has 3 columns: to do, doing, and done. And I literally put everything in the to-do column and I say it's going to be done by this certain date. And each one of the little sticky notes is a very specific definition of done, meaning that if I wanted to have 4 videos, that was a video series that people got for free, and at the end of it I wanted it to sell my course, and I wanted to have a website that had my logo on it and that people could put their credit card number into. Instead of doing all of that at once, which is what I used to do, I would just get stuck doing none of it. I was like, well, I want to have a website before I make my videos, but to have a website, I have to have a logo. And before I have a logo, I have to figure out what my business name is. And I would just be stuck in this circle when really all I wanted was to not have to talk to people one at a time to sell them into my in-person course that I taught. And so instead of going into that circle over and over and over again, I just made a definition of done. And my definition of done was I want to have 4 videos that are recorded, that are on YouTube, that I could send somebody an email with 4 links in it, and they could just watch the videos before they talk to me. So instead of me having to talk to somebody for an hour and a half to help them, buy my in-person course, I could just get them to watch these 4 videos. That would take an hour, and then we would talk in person for 30 minutes. So rather than each closing cycle being an hour and 30 minutes, it now was just 30 minutes. And I didn't need to have a website to do that. I didn't have to have a way to take a credit card. I didn't have to have any of that. All I had to do was record 4 videos and upload them to YouTube. So having a very specific definition of done, and 2 weeks later that was finished. And as soon as it was finished, now rather than spending all this time with closing calls, I just had people watch those videos first, which then freed up 1 hour for every single client, which I could then use that hour, right, to go and start to build a website, or to go to research where to find somebody to build a website for me. So that is the idea behind Scrum. And really the number one thing about it is just finding ways to do things in versions, right? Rather than being like, I have to make the best videos ever and they have to be on my website and whatever. Instead of that, I just said, this is version 1 of my videos. And all they have to be better than is the videos I currently have. And I currently don't have any videos. So literally, it just has to be better than nothing. And the next time I make videos, it has to be better than my current ones. And so that is called iterations or versions. And thinking that way will get you unstuck and help you do things faster, because if you have the perfectionist gene and you're like, I can't do this until everything's perfect, then you get stuck and nothing ever gets done. So if you can do versions, it allows you to just do an imperfect version and get it started. If you want a resource, there's a book called Scrum, The Art of Getting Twice Done in Half the Time, I think it's called. There's also an online version called Farvo, and it just helps you do the Scrum process. So maybe after you read the book, instead of actually getting a sticky board and building that, you can do it online very easily. The fifth lesson from this year for me was really outsourcing. And so I would really suggest that you find some way to outsource. And especially if you're doing Scrum and you're thinking about things in different versions, outsourcing can be like a portion of a job, right? Instead of saying I have to have somebody else do this entire job for me, you can say, well, maybe somebody else could do just like one portion of this job. Or if you're an entrepreneur and you're like, I'm putting work into my business, but I also have a job, I don't have enough time. Well, what are some things you can do to get some time back? Listen, if you have a business and if you put an hour into that business, you can make $50, then why would you ever mow your own lawn? Pay somebody else, pay some kid $20 to mow your lawn and take that same hour and go put it into your business and make $50. And you just made a $30 profit and you didn't have to mow your lawn, right? And then take that $30 and use it to go free up the next thing. So that's a big thing. Instead of outsourcing, before you outsource, look at, can I eliminate this completely? Like, can I just not do this? If you have to do it, then find out, can I automate it? Is there an app or something that will do it automatically for me? And if not, then how do I delegate it? How can I get somebody else to do this for me? So some examples would be a virtual assistant, lawn care, food prep service, Facebook ads, maybe, again, like a portion of a job where it's like I can't have somebody else do this whole thing for me. So an example of this, my assistant is on the line right now, and I can't outsource my webinars, right? I can't say you do my webinar because I have to do it. However, inside of the task of a webinar, there's a bunch of other tasks. There's setting up the thing in GoToWebinar. There's creating the tags in the email software. There's building out the slides that you're seeing today. So I can't outsource the part of me actually doing it, but it probably takes 10 hours of like prep time to do a webinar, where it's only like an hour and a half to actually do the webinar itself. So if I could outsource those other 8.5 hours, then I can spend that on higher dollar per hour things. So an example, if you would like to start growing your team, a resource for you would be, you want to screenshot this, profitfactory.com/360 delegation, the best resource I know on how to grow your team and on how to delegate. Number 6 out of 7 is 80-20 questions. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs, we think that we're entrepreneurs, but really we're acting like sales guys, right? We're acting like we just have a sales job. And 80-20 questions are things that take you out of the day-to-day of working in your business and take you to working on your business. So a question would be, what would you need to change about your business in order for you to maintain or increase profits while only working 1 hour per day? This question, I heard it about 2 years ago, and it blew my mind. At first, I was angry and was like, that's not possible, can't do it. And once I had my little internal temper tantrum, I wrote down a few things, and I was like, oh, it would just mean I would not be able to do in-person courses anymore because that takes too much of my time. I'd have to do the course online, and I would need to have somebody who created ads for me to drive traffic, and I just wrote out what I would need. And it's taken me 2 years to implement the answers to this question, and I'm still not completely done, but the answers to the question came very quickly. Another one would be, what single habit would you need to start or stop that would change, what single habit would you need to start or stop that would dramatically improve your personal performance in your business? So what is a single habit? And it might be something simple. It might be I need to stop playing PlayStation, or I need to exercise every morning, or I need to get a better night's sleep, or I need to wake up an hour earlier. So what single habit would you need to start or stop? So these are 80-20 questions. A resource for this is the 80-20 challenge. Just Google that, and you can answer one question per week. And some of those answers to those questions is what will help you bridge the gap from where you are to where you want to go. And number 7 is ask. Find ways to ask questions to your ideal client. So it could be surveys, net promoter score, Facebook groups, survey funnels. The bottom line is, if you have any type of a business where you're selling a product or service, rather than jamming everyone into the same bucket and being like, hey, you should buy what I sell, let them tell you what they want and then direct them to where they get it. And you can literally just direct people to different offers, to different things, and get paid for it without having to be like a sleazy salesperson, because you just help people get what they want. And as a result, you get everything that you want. And if you want some more guidance around that, there's a book called Ask from Ryan Levesque. It's specifically more useful if you're doing online marketing, but he talks about how to make sure that you're talking exclusively to your ideal market. So if you have a business where you're doing anything online or marketing related, I would highly recommend the book Ask. So those are my top 7 lessons from 2016. Before we wrap here, I'd love to know, number 1, what's your number 1 takeaway, right? If you don't have a takeaway from this call, then literally you just wasted an hour and 44 minutes. So take everything we talked about today. What is your number 1 takeaway? Could be a lesson that you learned. Could be, here's the thing that I'm going to do moving forward. But what is your number 1 takeaway? What's the action step that you're going to take inside of the next 7 days that will make a difference for you? So go ahead and type into the questions box your number 1 takeaway. And then I've got a few minutes here where we can go through any questions and answers. And I'd love to hear from some of you. So go ahead and let me know what was your number 1 takeaway from the training today. What's one thing that got your attention from today? Paul says intention-related goals, and that is huge. So I think, Paul, what you're saying is not just the goal, but what's the reason behind the goal, and who is the person that you want to be getting there. So if that's right, let me know. Lisa says, number 1 takeaway, process to help with setting goals, since I've not really ever set goals other than having vague ideas of what I would like to have. Fantastic. Karen says, it's going to be a lot easier to start up my business than I thought. Thank you so much. You are very welcome, Karen. I'd love to know what was it about today that makes you feel like it's going to be a lot easier to start your business. Lois says attraction marketing is the takeaway. So fantastic. And Lois would love to know what is one specific action step that you're going to take this week to help with attracting rather than chasing. Douglas says, what experiences that I want. So not setting goals, but rather setting experiences. That is absolutely huge. And a very simple example of that. The first time I went through this, I was traveling a lot for business. And I said, what are some experiences that I want to have and who do I want to be along the process? And I was going from Edmonton to Vancouver for business. I was going to fly like I normally do. And my son was 4 years old at the time, super into like Thomas and trains and all that kind of stuff. And I figured out that it wouldn't be that big of a difference for us to take a train rather than to fly. So taking a train meant that it took all day rather than, flying taking only a couple hours. But when it came to flying, I had to, go to the airport and do a bunch of stuff anyways. And my whole day usually ended up, not doing anything anyways. So I ended up taking the family with me and we took a train through the Rocky Mountains, and it meant that I had like a full day with no access to internet or my phone. And it was like some great reflection time. It was like amazing family time. And the scenery that we saw was like just first class. People literally travel all over the world to see Canadian Rocky Mountains, and they're like in my backyard, and I've never taken a train before. So just saying what experiences do I want to create, not just what goals do I want to have, made a massive impact. And that is like one of the first thing on my gratitude list is that trip. And that was a few years ago. Bradley says specific goals and setting intentions. Awesome. Tim Nayula says 80-20 questions. What can I eliminate that is not serving me? Complete 12-week year campaign. Awesome. Karen says how to set goals, the different parts to achieve them. And that's how it'll be easier to create your business. Fantastic. Tim says I'll have it launched by Sunday. Lois, get new videos up on Facebook with invitation to a webinar. Outstanding. And Karen says you provided a pathway with steps to follow. I can see where to start now. Awesome. Really just look at that first domino, right? What is that first domino that I can take? Because it's all about creating momentum. And in my case last year, selling one course, it ended up happening like the last webinar of the first quarter. The first online course was sold. And as soon as one was sold, I was like, man, I can see 200 happening. Before that, it was like, yeah, it'd be nice to sell 200. And, I did the math. I'm like, I'd make this many dollars and it would allow me to do this and that. But as soon as I set that goal and said, I want one by the end of the first quarter, and the goal happened, then I was like, oh, I'm going to hit my quarter two goal, and it's possible. I know what to do, and I've built 80% of the stuff I have to build. Now I can set my goal for quarter number two. Okay, so that really is what you want to do, is figuring out what that first domino is. Tim Nye says the first domino was outstanding. Fully agree, Tim. And figure out what that first domino is and really look at what needs to be in place in a year from now. So, listen, thank you so much for joining us today and going through the process of creating 2017. I really hope that you take at least one of these sections and go back and really spend some time on it. I like to, put some music on, sit in front of the fire, and like really be intentional about what I want for the year. I also suggest that you go back through this every single quarter. So go into your calendar right now and put in a reminder every 3 months and check back in with your goal every quarter, because it's not a goal in a year from now isn't that useful. 90 days from now is. And so what's that goal that you have for your first 90 days of this year, and then review it. Go through the exact same process. What are the anchors that I went through, right? What stopped me from hitting these goals, and what am I going to do differently in quarter number 2 to make it happen? That's really what's going to give you feedback and allow you to hit your goals. So thank you very much for coming on to the line today. I'm going to go through and answer some questions, so I'll stick on here for as long as needed. If you have any questions about the top 7 lessons or about this goal setting process, for me, this is like the 5th year I've done this goal setting process. So again, we talked earlier about thinking in terms of versions, right? My version 1 was, what did I need to do to be able to get some videos done? What I wanted was videos on a website with a place for people to put their credit card information and a logo and a professional sounding little jingle before my videos and all of that. And wanting all of those things stopped me from doing any of them until I was able to say, what's version number 1, right? So this is for some of you, this is like version 10 of setting your goals. You've been doing it for years and you're like, great, you can take a couple of things I talked about, see the nuances and add it into what you're doing and get great results. For others, you're like, hey, I've never done goal setting before in my life, right? And you're like, I want to do everything that was on the webinar, and where do I start? Listen, just find one thing that resonated with you and do it today. That's your first domino. Just find one thing and do it. And in a year from now, when you're going through this process again and you're setting goals again, you'll be able to add another thing to your plate, and you'll be able to figure out what worked for you and what didn't work for you last year. So I'm going to take some time here and go through some questions. Tim says first domino is outstanding. Lisa says this seems like quite a good process. How well does it work? How do I get myself to actually do this and go through the steps? I could also see how it could be applied to multiple areas of your life. So for me, this works extraordinarily well. And what I would look for is just finding a recipe of what works for you. And you can do that just by some trial and error. So if last year you set 0 goals, then take any one of the things from this and go ahead and use it. What I would suggest that you don't do is I would suggest that you don't say, here's 15 areas of my life and I'm going to change all 15 areas and here's where I want to be in a year from now in all of them. What I would say is if you want to, set some intentions for different areas of your life, that's fantastic, but make sure you break it down to what's the domino in that area of my life, and try to find a domino that's like something you can do today or in the next 7 days, and try to, my suggestion is the best return on your time and on your investment is going to be finding things that you can do once and then they're done. So an example of that would be if I said, hey, I want to start eating better this year. And that's one of the areas that I want to focus on. My first domino could be, I'm going to go to the grocery store and I'm going to get some, healthier food. And that's a great first domino. It's a good step. However, that one step is something you have to do every single week in order to get results. Whereas another first domino, or another domino, doesn't have to be the first one. Another domino would be, I'm going to spend some time researching and I'm going to come up with a 7-day healthy meal plan with foods that I enjoy. And you just make a 1-week meal plan. If you took the step to make a 1-week meal plan, then that meal plan could serve you throughout the entire year. Not necessarily you'll do the same food every single week, but you could do it once, and then the next week you do a different meal plan, and the next week you do a different meal plan, and now all of a sudden you've got 3 weeks of a meal plan that you can literally just rotate, and every 3 weeks you're like back to meal number 1, but you're on that process, right? Maybe you have cheat days in there, whatever. The point is, there's a difference between saying what I'm going to do is I'm going to be more disciplined today, or what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the grocery store, versus I'm going to create something like a meal plan that will be there over and over and over. So same exact thing would be like, hey, my goal is to go and talk to 5 people per day. Like, that's okay, but something that would be better than that is to say, here's what I'm going to build that will attract leads to me on an ongoing basis. Because once it's done once, and once that's complete, then I don't have to worry about it anymore. So hopefully that is helpful. Lois says, not sure what form to fill out. Have the replay, please. To have the replay of, so anybody who's on here, if you're on here, you will get the replay. Tim says, great webinar, Jimmy. You have to run. No problem, my friend. Thanks for being on with us. I'm going to exit out of this screen. if anybody has any questions, go to my main screen here. If you have any questions about anything at all, any of the lessons for the year or anything like that, just go ahead and throw it into the chat box and we can go through it. Otherwise, we will wrap up. Any questions or any final takeaways? Just a lot of thank yous. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time. Thanks. You guys are very, very welcome. I hope you enjoyed the webinar. And yeah, I really hope that you enjoyed doing this process. And it's really been something that's made a big difference for me in the last few years. Bradley says, yes, thanks. Gina says, leading with gratitude can really make all of the difference. Fully agree with that. I'm excited to put your suggestions into practice. Thanks, Karen. Thanks from Gina, and thank you. It was really helpful from Douglas. Well, hey, listen, thanks everybody for jumping onto the line. We went longer than expected, but thank you so much for being on here. And the way that you can, honor yourself and honor me is by going through and taking this process and really finding out what that next domino is and taking action on it. And I'll send the replay out to you in case you want to go through this again and really dive deep. So fantastic. Thank you so much. I'm excited so pumped for the replay because I want to go over this again from Tammy. Well worth the extra time from Karen. Listen, thanks everybody for being on, and I'm going to get this recording out to you as soon as I can. Have an amazing 2017, and listen, I love it if you enjoyed this to go onto my Facebook wall and just let me know what was the one domino that you took away. What was the one domino effect, the first thing that you did to take action from this training? So thanks a lot for being on, and we'll talk to you soon.